are these people?
Tara Reid shared this article from Blaze. Roger Waters rips war criminal Biden over Ukraine, declares Taiwan as part of China, lauds Russia for almost winning World War II. So did you see any of this?
I mean, I've seen the clips, but yeah, I've seen the clips of Walters with his interview. Yes.
Yeah, we do have links, Ed. I will put links in chat here in a second. So
actually, I'll do that if you.
Cool. And I think he probably wants the Chicago one too, which is like last week's. But I'll bring this video up for people while we wait. So this is the video from CNN, right? So we'll see their version. I'm foreshadowing a little bit, but let's go here and hit play.
Pink Floyd co-founder Roger Waters' current solo tour, instead of turning down the politics, he's amping them up to 11. Last time out, he preached against Donald Trump and in favor of Palestine. This tour, twice delayed by COVID and ominously titled "This Is Not a Drill," includes references to police murdering black men, semi-automatic weapons and abortion, and giant video screens in the shape of a cross. Waters' guitarist Jonathan Wilson has explained why Waters' tour differs from those of fellow older classic rockers. Quote, "Even the Stones or members of the Beatles, it's more of a trip down memory lane than it is a current show. The activism, that's sort of the key to the whole thing." As a longtime fan of Waters' music who doesn't always agree with his messaging, I wanted to ask him about his mix of performing and preaching. Things got a bit animated. So here's the quote, as I understand, that begins the show.
If you're one of those, I love Pink Floyd, but I can't stand Roger's politics, people, you might do well to f*** off to the bar.
You might do well to F off to the bar right now. At the outset of the show?
Yeah.
Because
it's a really good way to start the show. But apart from anything else, it sets a few things straight.
Namely?
Also it encourages a lot of the people who have come to the show, because they have listened to everything I've written since 1965 or whenever I started writing songs. So they do know what my politics are, and they do understand where my heart is, and they understand sort of why I'm there. But maybe it also gives a message to people who don't want to be there, in which case them effing off to the bar is probably not a bad idea. Except that you never know, those people, if they sit in a community like my audience is on these shows of This Is Not a Drill on this tour, there is such a great feeling of communication in that room between me and the audience, and between us combined with all our brothers and sisters all over the rest of the world, irrespective of who they are, where they live, their ethnicity, their religion, their nationality, or anything else. Because if This Is Not a Drill has a message, it is that we have to communicate one with the other.
To the guy who says, shut the F up, play the hits, do you want him, as long as he doesn't shout it out, do you want him in the arena?
I don't not want him there, so long as he doesn't annoy the people who do understand what's going on in the arena. I'm happy for him to
But I'm
be
saying,
there.
like, do I have to buy in? Does a person in the crowd have to buy in to the message? I've always loved the music.
Right.
Some of the messages I can buy into, and some I can't.
I've only got one message. Two strangers passing in the street, by chance two passing glances meet, and I am you, and what I see is me. That is my message. And that was on Medal, which was in 1970. And basically, my message hasn't changed. I recognize your humanity, but I recognize all the Russians and the Chinese and the Ukrainians and the Yemenis and the Palestinians.
Are you an equal opportunity offender on this tour? Here's why I ask. I remember the last tour. Of course, I came and watched. Very much, about Trump. And in the current show, you've got a montage of war criminals, according to you, and a picture apparently of President Biden on the screen, and it says, "Just getting started." What's that all about?
President Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Well, he's fueling the fire in the Ukraine for a start. That is a huge crime. Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky, the president, to negotiate, obviating the need for this horrendous war that's killing.
You're blaming.
We don't know how many Ukrainians.
But you're blaming the party that got invaded. Come on, you've got it reversed.
That's any war. When did it start? What you need to do is look at the history, and you can say, well, it started on this day. You could say it started in 2008. Okay, this war is basically about the action and reaction of NATO pushing right up to the Russian border, which they promised they wouldn't do when Gorbachev negotiated the withdrawal of the USSR from the whole of Eastern Europe.
When you say this, then I have to say, what about our role as liberators? You of all people,
you have no role as liberators.
World War II. World War II.
You got into World War II because
Come on.
Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor. You were completely isolationist until that sad, that devastating,
I would argue
awful
we were
day
always going to get in, and that pushed us in. But thank God the United States got in, right? You lost your father in World War II. Thank God the United States.
But thank God the Russians had already won the bloody war almost by then. Don't forget, 23 million Russians died, protecting you and me from the Nazi menace.
Hey, and you would think the Russians would have learned their lesson from war and wouldn't have invaded Ukraine.
Well, you,
Fair?
with all your reading, I would suggest to you, Michael, that you go away and read a bit more and then try and figure out what the United States would do if the Chinese were putting nuclear-armed missiles into Mexico and Canada.
The Chinese are too busy encircling Taiwan as we speak, okay?
They're not encircling Taiwan. Taiwan is part of China. And that's been absolutely accepted by the whole of the international community since 1948. And if you don't know that, you're not reading enough. Go and read about it.
Okay, did we solve anything here today?
Yeah, we did. Well, no, we didn't. Because you're believing your propaganda, your side's propaganda.
You're defining it as
Taiwan,
propaganda.
you can't have a conversation about human rights, and you can't have a conversation about Taiwan without actually doing the reading.
Roger, if you're having a conversation about human rights, at the top of the list of offenders are the Chinese. Why is it always the Western world?
The top of your list.
Why is it
the
always
Chinese
the Western
didn't
world?
invade Iraq and kill 1 million people in 2003. In fact, as far as I can recall, hang on a minute, who have the Chinese invaded and murdered, slaughtered?
Their own.
Bollocks.
Okay.
That's absolute nonsense. Complete nonsense. You should go away and read, but read some proper
Hey, my
literature.
problem is I spend too much time reading your liner notes, okay? Thank you for doing this.
Thank
I
you
appreciate
for
it.
talking to me.
All
It's
right.
always a
So, thoughts so far, Colin?
As the children say, Roger is based.
Yes. That he is. I would like a bass from Roger Waters. I'm sure he's got a couple extra, but
On Pink Floyd,
no, I will not watch you again, sir. So, this article goes on to say, so in a dizzying and contentious CNN interview, did you feel like it was dizzying, Colin? I mean, I feel like my inner ear is fine.
I can understand if it was confusing for a shit lab.
Yes. Well, this is from The Blaze, so
it wasn't
it's
for me.
No, this is from The Blaze, so keep that in mind.
Right.
So focusing on world politics, Pink Floyd founder Roger Waters explained why he's calling President Joe Biden a war criminal as part of his current concert tour, and managed to declare that Taiwan is part of China, and even that Russia almost won World War II. I think he said specifically that they had almost won the bloody thing.
Right.
So, as readers of The Blaze know by now, Waters arguably has been more of a geopolitical pundit in recent years than a musician and performer. The bass player and songwriter behind iconic albums such as The Wall and Dark Side of the Moon previously targeted former President Donald Trump in Israel, but with his current This Is Not a Drill tour, Waters has taken issues with Biden. So, when CNN's Michael Smerconish recently asked Waters about his anti-Biden imagery at his concerts, Waters replied, well, he's fueling the war in Ukraine. For a start, that is a huge crime. Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky to negotiate, obviating the need for this horrific and horrendous war? So when Smerconish told Waters he's blaming the party who got invaded, come on, you've got it reversed. Waters shot back with the following to the CNN host, any war, when did it start? What you need to do is look at the history. You could say, well, it started on this day. You could say it started in 2008. The war is basically about the action and reaction of NATO pushing right up to the Russian border, which they promised they wouldn't do when Gorbachev negotiated the withdrawal of the USSR from the whole of Eastern Europe. Smerconish, is that how you pronounce his name, I think? I think that's what Ed Heller is trying to tell me, or making fun of his name, one of the two. Countered by asking Waters about the U.S.'s role as liberators, particularly during World War II. Waters wasn't having it. You got into World War II because of Pearl Harbor. You were completely isolationist until that sad, that devastating, awful day in 1941 that we knew it was coming. We've known for years that we knew about this, that it went all the way up the chain of command and we let it happen. I digress. Thank God the Russians had already won the bloody war almost by then. Don't forget 23 million Russians died protecting you and me from the Nazi menace. So, yeah, back and forth didn't let up.
I think with that, hold on, pause there. Because here's the thing with that, though. I don't think in my history books and talking about World War II, it was ever mentioned in that way.
No.
And
not until
I understand.
Like people have to go watch stuff and find out afterwards. You know, Stalingrad and
Right, but that's what I'm saying. That fact is not taught in school.
No,
it's always kind of taught about like it was America who won it.
Yes.
You know, it's and so you could see it with Smerconish basically being like, and that makes sense given like his. Oh, Americans, we are the liberators type of like you can see where that comes from based on the propaganda that we've kind of been spoon-fed, you know, in our education system, especially about World War II in this country, you know, that he's kind of, and I'm sure he had his talking points, but he wasn't necessarily like, no, talking points aside, he was probably raised with that idea that it was Americans who helped win World War II, and it wasn't necessarily that Russians did their part.
Well, and leave the guy from the UK to be like, hey, no, we were dealing with it a lot long. You know, you guys didn't help that much. You know, like that's the way they feel about it. That's, you know, it's like, the Russians were the one who did everything because they had a massive amount of manpower and a gigantic landmass, and it was, you know, hard for Germany to do what they did towards there, you know, so, and the Russians ended up pushing them almost all the way to like, we cut everything off at the Black Forest. Like, that's what we were there to do, you know, like push them towards Russia. We were the, you know, like the flush dogs, getting them out of the brush. That's all they wanted, you know, the Russians did the rest. We just snagged a few Nazi scientists before they did it. But, you know, we forget about that. But the back and forth didn't let up, as Smerconish argued that you would think that the Russians would have learned their lesson from war and would have invaded Ukraine. Wouldn't have invaded Ukraine. With that, Waters told the host, who was chuckling by this point, I would suggest you, Michael, go away and read a bit more, and then try to figure out what the United States would do if the Chinese were putting nuclear-armed missiles into Mexico and Canada. Like, the Chinese are too busy encircling Taiwan as we speak, okay? Smerconish chirped back at Waters. They're not encircling Taiwan. Taiwan is part of China, and that's been absolutely accepted by the whole of the international community since 1948. Waters hollered at the host, and if you don't know that, you're not reading enough. Go and read about it. You're believing your propaganda, your side's propaganda. You can't have a conversation about human rights, and you can't have a conversation about Taiwan without actually doing the reading. Then it was Smerconish's turn to get testy. Roger, if you're having a conversation about human rights, at the top of the list of offenders are the Chinese. Why is it always the Western world? The Chinese didn't invade Iraq and kill 1 million people in 2003. Waters interrupted and soon wondered, who have the Chinese invaded and murdered and slaughtered? Their own, Smerconish replied, presumably in reference to the Uyghurs, although Smerconish didn't clarify that in the moment, their own. Bollocks, that's absolute nonsense. Complete nonsense. You should go away and read. Waters shot back before the interview ended on a surprisingly friendly note. So friend of the show, Fiorella, wanted to put out that, you know, the title, If They Were Honest, right? Which fans abandoned Roger Waters after he branded Biden a war criminal over Ukraine. So this is the headline now from the Daily Mail. Right? Roger Waters gained more fans if he unapologetically dropped truth bombs on a CNN interviewer who was regurgitating tired pro-war talking points, hugely exposing the West's false narrative on Ukraine, and mainstream media is in PR crisis mode, trying to save face. So this is from Shadowproof, and I think it was I think I saw Blumenthal talk about it first, and I think who's over at Shadowproof? I forget his specific name who did it, but I will find out. I'm sure Indy will tell me in a second. But Chris Legion, don't you know that most wars are ended by throwing more weapons and money at them? Yes, that's what I heard. So I just brought this here because I wanted to point out that they edited the interview, right? Like pretty heavily. So
these wars that are destabilizing to everyone all around us.
So this is CNN's edit.
Are you an equal opportunity offender on this tour? Here's why I ask. I remember the last tour. Of course, I came and watched. Very much, about Trump. And in the current show, you've got a montage of war criminals, according to you, and a picture apparently of President Biden on the screen, and it says, just getting started. What's that all about?
President Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Well, he's fueling the fire in the Ukraine for a start. That is a huge crime. Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky, the president, to negotiate, obviating the need for this horrendous war that's killing?
You're blaming.
We don't know how many Ukrainians.
But you're blaming the party that got invaded. Come on, you've got it reversed.
So, and here's the different.
An equal opportunity offender on this tour. Here's why I ask. I remember the last tour. Of course, I came and watched. Very much, about Trump. And in the current show, you've got a montage of war criminals, according to you, and a picture apparently of President Biden on the screen, and it says, just getting started. What's that all about?
President Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Well, he's fueling the fire in the Ukraine for a start. That is a huge crime. Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky, or whatever his name is, the president?
So did you notice what was missing? Like what they cut. So they cut like right here. Right? And then had his like question. But instead of like, well, Roger was talking about why don't they have Zelensky just capitulate to, you know what I mean? Like they could end the war that way. Like they completely remove that.
To negotiate and to explain why, when he stood on the platform of ratifying the Minsk agreements, which he did when he was elected by 73% of the Ukrainian population that was left able to vote. After that, somebody either whispered in his ear or he completely changed his mind about making peace in the Donbass and about solidifying the Minsk agreements. and making peace with their Russian neighbors and obviating the need for this horrendous war that's killing.
You're blaming.
We don't know how many Ukrainians.
But you're blaming the party that got invaded. Come on, you've got it reversed.
Yeah, so you can see what happened there. They made it look like Michael Smerconish was cutting in to redirect Roger so that he was less pro-Russia and to
right. So,
but not only that, like they cut out like the part where Roger gave more of an explanation.
Explanation, yeah.
That's
as opposed to just making a statement, right?
Statement.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's that was it. I just thought people would be interested in seeing how CNN terribly edits their stuff to lie to you.
But you know what? It just reminds me of, like, what Jackson Hinkle is going through, right? Like with
yes,
the Rolling Stone debacle, like, like he's basically requested, Owen Higgins, for the interview that I guess they want to do for him for Rolling Stone, to email him. Now, I think in light, I think people are like, well, why can't you, like, what's wrong with doing a phone interview or like doing like, one on camera or whatever?
Yeah,
that's the reason.
There can be issues. Yeah, like
there can be issues. Like,
especially if he gets
video, video you can easily cut. Like
email you have down in writing, like
it's a lot easier to have shit down in writing that, like, that's a little bit more solid versus, and you guys basically know this, like, especially being in social media, any visual you can cut and manipulate it to anything that you want. You know? So not saying I agree with necessarily the tactic that Jackson is doing with all of that, but I understand why.
Yeah.
Because, I think especially in this case, Owen is not necessarily a good faith actor here and is looking for a way to kind of smear Jackson just as far as his coverage on Ukraine. So, and kind of undermine his, channel, probably even more. So I could see it as Jackson's a way to kind of protect himself, which makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, I think this just kind of shows, like with Roger, like he actually knows his shit. He actually knows his history. And the fact that, obviously it's CNN. They're not like CNN, I think is kind of well known, to kind of make it kind of clickbaity, for people to kind of watch, and kind of see. So I think in a lot of ways, I think this is why for many of us in the space, we prefer live streams. Only because, like, especially if you see it live, it's raw, it's in the moment. Like, even with us, you can see like the tech issues that we go through. Like, like it's more authentic in that way because, like it's, live, So, but yeah, all that to say, like, I just found out that Roger's going to be performing in DC next week. I think I'm going to go to a show now.
Nice. We probably should like message Misty and be like, yo, I know you got like those backstage passes, Misty. Let's fucking hook Collin up with those,
Really?
I mean, dude, Rogers has got like them set up with like a booth in the front. Like, I'm sure if you just like had a table and some flyers for A, you could just, get right in. Yeah, like, yeah, we'll reach out to Misty and see if we can get some nepotism going. But anyway,